Hey guys, Josh Collacchi here, and I'm here to discuss week 2. It's the second week of college football, and we have a 3-game slate for Thursday and Friday's game. So I just wanted to get into some picks, talk about why we like some certain guys, and who we're going to be rolling with in our lineups. There are 3 games, so rather than just breaking down each position and different kinds of games, there are guys that I like at each position. I'm going to actually break down each game for you. So you have a little bit of a breakdown of the players that are playing in these given games, and you can make your decisions on who you want to put in your lineups. The 3 games we have for you on Thursday and Friday night are Louisiana Tech at Western Kentucky. We have Miami, Florida, Miami Hurricanes against Florida Atlantic, the Owls. And the last game is on Friday night is Utah State Aggies against the Utah Utes. A rivalry game there right away out there in the Pacific Coast. Now, for those 3 games, of course, we're going to be looking at a few things to judge by, which you always look at for all daily fantasy sports, but especially for college football. And the first one is the Las Vegas lines. For the first game, the Louisiana Tech against Western Kentucky, the over-under is 61.5, which is the highest by over 10 points on the slate. And so that'll be a game that we want to target. And the other reason why I want to target is that game spread right now is a pick 'em. So it means we could go either way. That means Vegas is projecting both teams to score 30 points. It's going to make for an interesting game. Now, the 2 quarterbacks in that game, Louisiana Tech is Jeff Driscoll. Quarterback is 8,000 on FanDuel. And the one thing I want to discuss with Driscoll, he's a former Florida Gators transfer. Former #1 prospect in the country. He's a dual-threat quarterback. He didn't play very well at Florida. Maybe the SEC or the big stage was too much for him. But last week in his first game with Louisiana Tech, he threw 4 touchdowns. He ran the ball well, and he looks pretty good. So it makes for a decent matchup this week against Western Kentucky. The other quarterback is Brandon Doughty, which, of course, was a very detrimental player last week, too. A lot of lineups. He costs a lot. He was projected to score a lot of points. He was in a game that had a very high point total. So although he did not do very well last week, he's had a decent matchup again this week. He's priced at 9,000. He's going to be the other quarterback in that game. 2 running backs in this game are Kenneth Dixon, who's the running back for Louisiana Tech, and the other guy for Western Kentucky is Leon Allen. Both these guys are very high priced. Dixon is 8,700 and Allen is 8,200. They both make for decent options, but Dixon is actually my top option on this short slate. There are only 3 receivers I want to discuss for this given slate in this game, actually. Trent Taylor is the only guy I'm looking at for Louisiana Tech. He's 6,200, and he's the top option for Jeff Driscoll. They do plan to run the ball a lot more. The other guy I want to discuss for Western Kentucky is Jared Dangerfield. Of course, this guy is one of the top guys in college football, but he's battling an injury. There's rumors that he's not fully healthy yet, and he hasn't played all that much. The next guy is Tywon Taylor, who was the next guy up for that offense, and it's a very pass-savvy offense. So of that game, those 2 receivers I wanted to talk about that I do like are Trent Taylor and Jared Dangerfield if they do play. If Dangerfield is out, I do like Tywon Taylor. Now, this game also has a tight end by the name of Tyler Higbee, who's the Western Kentucky tight end. He's the only tight end I think it's worth targeting on this slate. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was over 80% owned, but you almost have to have him because he is a clear #1 target. He's going to get a lot of options to a lot of targets, a lot of yards, has a chance to score a touchdown or 2. And considering that there's no other real option for tight end, I think he's a guy you have to have, especially if you're playing in cash games. Now, just wrapping up this game, we talked about the fact that Louisiana Tech and Western Kentucky has a very high score projected total. The reason why is because last year Louisiana Tech was 91st in the country in pass defense, and the Western Kentucky's passing attack, which is a top passing attack in all of college football. And looking at Louisiana Tech, you can look at their quarterback, their receivers, like we just talked about, and their rushing attack. So I think this is a game you want to be targeting, especially with the fact that it is a high total projected in Vegas, and there are a lot of good players and 2 defenses that really aren't that good. Next game I wanted to break down was the Miami Hurricanes against the Florida Atlantic Owls, I believe is their nickname. This over-under is 55 right now, but the spread is the Miami Hurricanes are favored by 17.5 points. So this game is projected to be a blowout. The Hurricanes are expected to really score a lot of points and really not give up many points. And that's the one thing with that defense last year. Miami Hurricanes actually had a very good defensive team, and they're returning 8 starters. So I don't think the FAU Florida Atlantic team is a big target in terms of what we're looking at in terms of good matchup. With only 3 games, you're going to have to consider some of them as well. The quarterbacks in this game are Brad Kaya for Miami Hurricanes and Jackus Johnson, who is the quarterback for Florida Atlantic. Both of these guys have a good arm. They're very mobile, but Kaya is definitely more of the play here, especially since Florida Atlantic defense is not anywhere close to Miami's defense. If I'm going to pick between the two of them, I think Kaya is definitely the play, especially at only $300 more. But I would prefer to go with the other quarterbacks we just discussed, in either Driscoll or Dowdy. The 2 running backs in this game, or the starting running backs rather, Greg Howell from Florida Atlantic, who is the main feature of this offense, with the exception of the quarterback, but he has a tough matchup against Miami Hurricanes defense. The Hurricanes starting running back is a guy named Joseph Yearby, who splits carries with a guy that pretty much led the team last year, last week, in Mark Walton, but they won in a little bit of a blowout. So expect Yearby. It should probably come to blowout in a hurry. It really just becomes a committee with all those prospects they have for Miami Hurricanes. So I might be staying away from that rushing attack if I can. The 2 receivers, one for each team for this game, is Rashawn Scott, who's a wide receiver for the Miami Hurricanes. He's a very good prospect. He has a chance to be an NFL-type talent if he can put it all together, and he's definitely the #1 option for the Miami Hurricanes. The other one is Jensen Stoshak for Florida Atlantic. Now, he's a guy that will be forced a lot of targets. He's going to get a chance to catch a lot of balls, get a lot of yards. But he hasn't faced a cornerback or anybody in the secondary like Miami in his career. So he'll be in for a tough matchup as well. But the fact that he'll be forced some targets, it might be worth using. Of anybody in this game that I would like to use, of course, we talked about how good Miami's defense is. But Florida Atlantic's defense is not very good. They were 87th in pass defense last year, 114th in rush defense, and they're returning a lot of their starters. And like we said, with a smaller program like this, if they're getting new starters in, that's not necessarily a good thing, because there really isn't a lot of talent to go around at these kind of second-tier schools in Division I. But if we're looking at guys that we did want to start, I do like Joseph Yearby as Miami's running back. He gets a lot of carries, which I do think he'll be able to, especially in a good matchup. And he won't need 20 carries to reach value, and that's one thing to look at in college football, because a lot of big plays happen, and Yearby could break one off in the first quarter and just meet value right away. The other guys I do like are Rashawn Scott and Jensen Stoshak, simply because they get the targets. They're going to be the main focal points of those passing games. So with both of those guys seeing a lot of targets, they're definitely worth playing in a small slate. The last game I want to discuss is a game that a lot of people will look at some players, especially since it's on the Friday night, but the over-under there is only 44, and that's Utah State at Utah, big rivalry game out there in Salt Lake City. Now, at 44 over-under, that spread is favoring Utah right now by 2 touchdowns. So they're not expecting Utah State to score a lot of points. And Utah's offense obviously runs through a guy, but we'll talk about in a little bit, named Devontae Booker. So this game's going to be a little bit interesting from a daily fantasy perspective. Looking at the matchup, Utah last year was 93rd in the country in defending the pass, which means the Utah State's passing offense might be something to look at. And on the other side, Utah State's defense was actually pretty good, but they were only they're 58th in defending the pass. So if you were to target that Utah State defense, you would be looking at the passing attack from Utah, which we'll get into in a little bit. The quarterbacks in this game are Chucky Keaton for Utah State against Travis Wilson for Utah. Keaton was a very interesting NFL prospect 2 years ago, but he's unfortunately lost the last 2 seasons to season-ending injuries. He has a dual-threat ability, but he's not been playing very well since he got hurt. Now, it's only 1 game, and I think he played a few plays last year before he got hurt. But the one thing about him is he does have a lot of ability, and Utah's pass defense is the one way to exploit them. So Keegan might be a little bit of a contrarian option, and it's hard to find those in a short slate with only 3 games. The other guy, Travis Wilson, is not a great thrower. He runs the ball a little bit in that Utah offense, and I'm just not a big fan of his because of the other quarterback options on the slate. The 2 running backs, of course, Devontae Booker is one of the top guys in college football, actually, for daily fantasy. And he's one guy to look at because he's the focal point of an offense. But you're only going to be able to afford probably one of him or Kenneth Dixon, and I really like Kenneth Dixon over Booker for this slate. The one guy that is a little bit of a sneaky option is running back for Utah State is Lawan Hunt. He's 5,900 on FanDuel, and considering the fact that he's playing for the Aggies, he wasn't projected to be the starter, but they lost their starting running back, and Hunt's got a chance to really turn up the the heat here and can kind of gain a little bit of steam as the starting running back. He had 23 carries in the first game, so he looks like he's going to get a lot of that volume. There are 2 receivers that I would target in this game. Now, if you want to go a little bit of contrarian approach, this game is lower scoring according to Vegas, so these guys will be a little lesser owned. Now, Devontae Robinson's the receiver I'm looking at. He is questionable. He might not play, but if he does, he's the guy I'm targeting as a little bit of a stack option with Tucker Keaton. He's at 5,100. Now, the guy that's interesting for Utah, is a guy named Britton Covey. He's a freshman receiver, and the one thing about him is he wasn't expected to lead the team in receiving. And I know there's only been 1 game, but he looked like the focal point of that passing offense. So it's something to keep an eye on. He is at 5,500, which is a little bit more expensive than I'd like to pay, but he'll be lesser owned because a little bit of an unknown commodity. That pretty much wraps up what we're going to be discussing here for the first 3 games on this Thursday and Friday slate. So be sure to stack up on that Louisiana Tech and Western Kentucky game. Maybe get one of those top running backs options in either Kenneth Dixon or Devontae Booker, and try to fill in the rest of your roster with some guys we just talked about. Below this video will be some notes, as always, on RotoCurve. So be sure to check up on the research, use the college football tools, and let's hopefully have a successful 3-game slate to make some money for the weekend slate. For RotoCurve, I'm Josh Collacchi, and good luck, everybody.